call the meeting to order. This is the January 6th, 2026 meeting of the Bias and Hate Incident Reporting Work Group. I'm the chair, Paul Bowen, and welcome all. I'll call the roll. Sandeep?
Sure.
Deborah?
Here.
Dan? Here. Paul, I'm here, and I think Aggie is not here. We have an ex officio member sitting at the table. First, I'll start out. There'll probably be a couple of rounds of public comments because we're going to have a couple of speakers today. And there may want to be some discussion after the speakers, but I'll open up for a few minutes of public comments if anybody has anything to say at this point. Good. Okay. We'll move on. Approval of the minutes, December 15th minutes. Were there, Sandeep, did you have some edits on the
No,
minutes?
it was not, it was a few meetings back.
November 18th.
Oh, okay. Any comments on the minutes? Once again,
No.
well done. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minute.
Second.
Okay. Sandeep?
Aye.
That's an aye.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Dan? Paul is an aye. Minutes of December 15th are approved. So we don't have either of our speakers here today, so I was going to scramble the agenda anyway. I think they'll both be here. I think we're expecting Brian Farber and Carlos Hoyt. I told Carlos that 6:30 would be a good time for him to show up after these preliminaries. Let me jump to item 6 on the agenda, which is a focus group effort.
Yeah.
So to refresh everybody's memory, you've organized a focus group, one of several, at least two.
One of at least two that I've organized. I still need to organize the second one, which I would like to do. I'm going to be away during the week of Martin Luther King week, or holiday. So I'd like to do the second one either the following week or the week after. I need to just schedule it with the library. That's where I was going to do the second one. So I just have to get a room there, basically, and then advertise it again.
And we're doing better with signups.
Yeah, we have 6, I believe. 6. Yeah, for the one that's going to be. So we switched the days.
It's the 13th.
It's now the 13th, which is
Yeah.
what's advertised, but we did that just for scheduling. So we have that from 5:30 to 7:30 in the wheel, whatever the
Harvey Wheeler.
Yeah. And that's so that there were 20 slots open, so there are still 14 slots. So even though right now the ad says like you have to have signed up by January 2nd, but don't worry about that for anybody watching or anybody here. If you want to sign up, there's plenty of room. So, but we do have 6 people signed up, so it's really good. And one person said they couldn't, another person contacted me and said they couldn't come to the one on the 13th, but would like to come to the following one. So they will sign up for that.
Should we change the date that says January 2nd? Can we change that tomorrow?
Deadline.
The deadline?
I didn't change it, but whoever sends the email, I just put them in and then I'll just accept.
Yeah, but
it
we may
within
dissuade people. They may look at it and say, I'm too late.
They do ask, if it's too late, can I be on the second focus group? But I confirmed the rest of their attendance. But, I can check with Donna and make sure.
It wouldn't hurt to change it just in case somebody decides not to ask. I know we were talking about this before we can do the meeting, but I did talk about the focus group during the last school committee meeting. I at least a couple of folks, texted me saying that's a great idea. Hopefully some of them have signed up.
Okay.
And we have a meeting again tomorrow. I'll mention.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
We can get more folks to sign up.
Yeah, and it is in the Bridge. So it's advertised in the Bridge, and I know it's on the town's website.
Is it on the opinion page?
No, it's on their calendar page. That was the
Okay.
easiest way to do it.
Okay.
They were on pause a little bit during the holiday, but it was on there at least as of yesterday. I saw that.
And Court Booth, did you
I
contact?
did send that to him.
Court Booth's
and,
gonna distribute that, so,
um,
are there any other portals that we can use?
If anyone has recommendations. I'm
Has,
open to
has
it.
the bridge put it up on their social media page, do you know,
Well, it's on,
on the calendar?
it's on the calendar, sorry, I'm not quite sure. What I know is that it's on, like, if you go on electronically to the bridge, it's on their calendar. Um,
There's a select board meeting next Monday, the day before. As long as we're accepting people up to the last minute, I'll mention it at the select board meeting.
Remove the deadline for sign, just
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. There's plenty of room.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's nice that we already have 6 people, but definitely more welcome. And then, of course, we'll have the next one. So like, even if the rest of the slots fill up, not to worry, we'll have another one. Yeah, soon.
Tell me what you've been thinking about. I'm curious what the focus group structure would be and what you're thinking.
Well, I think one of the things I want to do is I want to incorporate, like in sort of things and ideas that we get today from the discussion with Carlos. So I think that's going to be really important. But basically I sort of had, a structure of like, I think we asked 3, or we set out sort of 3 sets of things that we wanted to discuss. And it's a 2-hour block of time and folks might want to take a break in between, but one is, to kind of understand, what people's interests are in this issue or concerns about this issue and what they think are maybe the barriers to reporting and to get their ideas about what we should be doing and what kind of system, if we should have a system, what would that look like? What do they want? I think that's really important and kind of actually aligns a little bit with what Carlos was saying here. So I'm really hoping that we get that input so that before, like we can take whatever input we get from the focus groups and then use that to help come up with whatever we end up proposing. And then we can have follow-up focus groups if you like to present the product and have people discuss it then, but definitely to get the input, like to find out, what people's experiences have been here and what the barriers are in their opinion, and then what they would like to see to remediate that, and particularly what they would want us to do with the reporting system, like what would be its purpose, because I think we
Yeah.
need help with that. So that was what I was thinking.
And Debbie, to be clear, this discussion is gonna be with everyone in the focus group at
Uh-huh.
one time, not individually.
Right, that's right. So everybody sits together, and the way, as I
Yeah.
shared before, I used to do this in Connecticut all the time. So basically have people, everybody sits around the table or, together, and everybody has the opportunity to speak. And it's, there are questions that will prompt the discussions, and then people will have a chance to interact and say how they feel and really have what I'm hoping will be a robust discussion about.
And it will not be recorded, it's.
Right, nobody's, no one's recording anything. I mean, I'll be taking notes
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, but,
Do you need somebody there to take notes? Because can you run it and take notes at the same time?
um,
Because there should be some rich information that you want to
Yeah.
capture without
yeah,
recording.
I mean, I take notes all the time, but
Okay.
if somebody wants to come and take
Well,
notes.
I'll be there.
So if you want to and you don't
Can't be more
mind,
than 2 of us.
so,
Yeah,
okay.
we both take notes. We don't
Okay,
miss anything.
yeah, I mean, I'm, as you can see, I'm the one person that didn't bring a computer. Notebook because I'm just old school and write a lot of notes.
Probably take much better notes than I do. What do you?
If I do that, I'll never keep up with anybody, so I'll just, I do that all the time for meetings and stuff.
And I'd like to capture the notes in our report, whatever that looks like
Mhm.
as an appendix. We
Yeah,
should
and
put
I'll
that in there.
definitely save all of them because of the
Yeah.
documents.
Welcome, Dr. Hoyt.
Nice to see you. Sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
Sorry.
Hi, Brian. You snuck up on me. Okay, anything else on the focus group?
I'm excited. And hopefully
Thank
We
you.
can sit in on the second one.
That would be
if-
great.
If Paul will let us.
There's only two people max, is that what you said? Okay.
I mean, can they be like members of the public? Or is there,
Well, strictly speaking, it should be just, but if we don't talk to each other or deliberate, as just attendees, you can be sitting there.
Southern Observer.
I'll make sure you don't talk to anybody. Okay. Okay, Brian, you're with us. Sorry, I didn't see you. Hi. You unmuted. So,
Hey, how are you?
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Let me just introduce it. So, the DI Commission have been developed, well, DI Commission has been working on these issues for a long time. And, the issue of reporting and reacting to incidents, it's not new to the DI Commission. What Brian and others had talked about, I guess several months ago, was sort of getting something started in town where people could, and in the wake of everything that happened with the ADL, I mean, there's a lot of churn in town, a new churn and desire to get information, which led to this working group. But we are not going to be in a position to launch a system, for several months, and maybe be mid-year. So Brian envisioned as a transitional step to launch Concord Safe. And so, Brian, with that, I think the objective here is kind of brief the group on sort of how that would mesh down the road with what we're up to, and just what you're thinking of in your system. Well, I wouldn't call it a system, whatever you call it.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you, Selectman, and thanks everybody. The one thing I was going to do a presentation. I don't think I have the permission to do a presentation. It's very similar to what I presented to the DEI Commission back in, I think, September. And then there's one little curveball at the end after a conversation with co-chair Andrea Fonserrata about a program that recently started here in Concord. So I don't have to share anything. I'll just talk it through. So basically, yeah, we began with this issue of what do we do following all of the issues of anti-Semitism, racism, a few issues of racism that occurred in town over the spring and the summer as well, and then some other issues. And so we began talking about that interim step that, as you noted, Paul, and that really it's not meant to be a reporting system. It's just meant to be this sort of beginning of a shift in cultural awareness in our town about bias and hate, and give people a rallying cry, something we can all coalesce around, and something that's noticeable. So we created this idea. We voted on it. It's been discussed to do this brand awareness for Concord Safe. And so we actually have concordsafe.org, or I have it, and want to transfer it over to the town. And it redirects now to a page that's not been publicized, but it is active thanks to Magnolia on our concordma.gov site. And that's where we decided to do it, just to keep it in-house. That seems to be the direction the town wants to go in, which is great as well. And then the idea is that this would then roll into or become encapsulated by the more formal reporting system and whatever else we want to do as a town, or what the working group and the select board choose to do. So we began by looking at what it currently exists for people out there in terms of reporting and awareness. And right now, the Concord Carlisle Regional School District is the only one that has a formal bias reporting system. And I can share this slide presentation later, but I have a link to that. Most people are aware of it. Now, the Concord Police Department doesn't have a bias reporting system. I guess if there's an issue, you can dial 911. That's their reporting system. But they do have a policy that's buried deep within the in their website, but they don't have anything on the front page, or as of late, they hadn't. We have a reporting system, but not for bias. It's for everything else in town. And then there's other issues that someone may want to report. So they don't have one that's specific to this issue. And then the DEI Commission has an email address for inquiries and questions. But that's what exists in this town. So the Concord Safe campaign, it's hashtag Concord Safe, and it aims to create, as I mentioned, this unified local brand to instill a strong community-centric culture of addressing bias locally here in Concord and general awareness of what is happening. And also by raising awareness and promoting the use of existing state and school reporting systems, the campaign ensures that members of the community feel safe and supported, that they have a place to go. Because as we learned from the issues at the Concord Carlisle High School, at that point, only 60% of students of color knew, actually, it was 60% did not know that there was a formal reporting system at the school, and 64% of white students didn't know that there was a reporting system. And that's sort of what triggered this, that people need to be aware inside and outside the school that there needs to be something. And this was sort of that effort out of those numbers. And then also inform Concord residents and visitors about how to contact the DEI Commission for Bias and Hate Programming training. There's been a lot of training with bystander training and others through the town. And just other celebrations or recognitions that we're doing so that they could email us and find out, what's happening. And then generally and importantly, it serves as a foundational campaign to be built upon as the select boards or as your working group continues to explore a bias and hate reporting system. So right now it has a splash content page that.
Do you want to share? Can he share? We could give you sharing permit if it's going to help describe some
Yeah, I
of
can
this.
show you. But where are we?
Oh wait, is he sharing? Maybe. If I can
It's not
share.
sharing yet.
Do you have permission to share?
I can send it. I think it's
Brian, you could send a request to share once.
here.
Oh, here we go. Got it. Oh, send request. All right, there we go. Thank you. Let's see. I got a bunch of screens here. There we go. All right, can you see that?
Yeah. got it.
Okay. So on the splash page, so again, I'll just quickly just show you what we're looking at here. So this was the sticker that was created. Now, the idea is to have a static sticker so people can add them and remove them or move them without any sort of issues of a regular sticker. You're familiar with static stickers. They're kind of the oil, change reminder stickers on the inside of your window if you still have a combustion vehicle. So that would be the sticker. This has a QR code that takes you to a landing page that right now looks like this. Hopefully you can see it actually moving. Of course, one of the first things, and this needs to be edited, although it is live, we really need to make sure that number one, this says if there's an emergency, call 911. That's the bottom line for any issue of bias or hate if you're in a situation that it's not about reporting, it's about an emergency. And it'll take you to this page that would that has the Carlisle Public Schools reporting system. It has state reporting systems and resources provided. It has the email contact for the DEI Commission. Now, initially there was, it looks like it's been removed. I appreciate Magnolia removing that, but there was a link to a form because I thought perhaps we could use one of the forms because then it has a formal system to it to really collect information. But that was removed, and I think Paul's suggestion a while back was good, that it would create confusion from one reporting system to another when one is official and one will be official. And until then, it would have a note that says we're building a unified system. That's at the bottom, but we could push that to the top to make it more clear about the initiative that's being done by the town. And so, for example, it would have links to bystander training opportunities and victim support, perhaps if that's what the direction we want to go in the long term. I did have a conversation with, and just in fairness and transparency, I had a conversation with Jessica Porter, who was supportive of this. Mimi Graney and I spoke about business engagement. She did have concerns that some businesses probably would not want to have something like this or may not want to have a sticker like this on their windows, just because of the nature of how DEI is received. But also calling it Concord Safe, she raised the question of, well, what are we currently doing to make Concord safer? This she felt isn't necessarily it. And so she had a lot of really good suggestions that maybe can be considered later. And so the idea now is to really begin just by working through town offices and building from town and building the awareness program from there and the campaign from there, and then working towards businesses as we go down the path of that. See if we can work with the schools and make sure that they are fully posting their own on this, on their doors and making them present in the classrooms. But that would be for their design. And since I didn't get to show that earlier, you can see this is their sticker that they put in their windows and doors and classroom walls. So then community spaces, we can brand Concord Safe at events. Food services, if businesses are willing to take regular stickers and put them on their pizza boxes. There was an idea for Cabela's there in Concord 250 to put QR codes and do a pizza top box top takeover with our branding for Concord 250. They were agreeable to that, but then that never transpired just for timing. And so again, I notice here that, I think the idea should be to start with town offices and then shift to businesses as we grow. And then these are just some of the groups that we initially thought could be helpful in promoting this and getting it out to their, oh, I have a typo there. I apologize. No, I don't do typos. AI would have helped. But basically these are some of the organizations that we thought could be helpful in promoting this, whether it's bookmarks that can go into books at the library or just putting it on the doors. The Chamber of Commerce was obviously one that we wanted to talk to. So this will be for, I think, a bigger rollout if we choose to do that. And then I think right now, and this is what Dr. Hunter has said many times, that the programs and the efforts that stick are usually student-led. So getting them involved through either the Playbook Initiative, seeing if Mr. Cameron is interested in participating in this, asking students to create their own social content using Concord Safe visuals. One thing we really want to do is try to get them to eliminate the snitch culture, which we saw in the ADL report was an issue, raised as a big issue. And then we have to remember that we have Minuteman Media Network that has an amazing studio right in the school. And there could be some promotional work we can do with this down the road as well there. It's open to Concord and Carlisle residents for free, nonprofits for free. So we should leverage that as we can. Now, here's the curveball. So Magnolia put out a notice in her email yesterday talking about it was the inclusion newsletter that she does, and talking about the launch of You Belong in Concord. Now, this was apparently promoted or presented or proposed, I should say, back in 2024. And so Andrea and I were chatting about it again today, and it's a really quite a good program. And it runs complementary to what we're trying to do with Concord Safe, but it's more robust. And so she and I talked about maybe having a meeting next week to see how Concord Safe really can be a component perhaps of what she's doing. And this was launched yesterday, I think and Magnolia can elucidate on that a little bit more. But it seems Carrie, Ms. LaFleur was interested in just moving this along and getting it out there. So there is now this hashtag You Belong in Concord that's being shared. I'll share this presentation with you. You can check out those links. There's an article from 2024 featuring Andrea that has a really good, simple explanation of what this is. And what we're trying to do with Concord Safe, some of the things are similar to what she wanted to do and what the DEI Commission then wanted to do with this. And then this just sort of fell off because I think it takes a commission and it takes a village here to really move this along. After I saw this logo and reread some of the items she shared with me a while back, this is really something I think we should be following. And I wonder now, and I hate to throw this curveball, if Concord Safe should be the lead. I think businesses might be more receptive to this. And there are some other really good ideas she and the commission had. So she and I are going to speak next week. about this, but I'm open to any questions, comments about Concord Safe. This I can't really dive too much into, but that's it.
Thank you. We have about 5 minutes on the agenda for questions. Um, in part, just a lot of things to unpack here. In part, I view what you're doing is helping us to pilot a few things. We have a number of questions we have to answer, like when do people report? Why do people report? Where do they report? How do you make that safe? And so you're developing a mechanism, whether it's barcode or, for people to enter a system. And I don't know if that's ultimately the entry point for what we're doing here, but I think about the portal. Where do people go to feel safe reporting? And so I don't have an answer for that. I'm just thinking that what you're doing could help us answer a few questions. It is confusing to me. And let's talk about the whole transitioning here between, so I see two interrelated efforts here, plus an effort that we're developing. How does this all come together sort of down, by mid-year? Are there three separate things that proceed, or are these all wrapped together? Again, these are just open questions. Brian, you don't have any answers for that, but I'm just thinking out loud here that we need to keep coordinating on this pretty closely.
Yeah. Again, if the Concord Safe winds up taking more time, and the timeline for your program is mid-year or later in the year, we start running into, does it become moot, right? The idea here is, though, with Concord Safe, is that as a town, have we said enough? Have we invited, visitors and people who visit our businesses and our shops and in our schools? Do they?
What?
No.
Things happening.
It's the door.
Sorry, we have to get our daughter out the door in 3 minutes. But the idea here is we want to be able to show the community and others that we're taking action, that we're taking these steps. And so more than entering a system, the words you use, Paul, this is just entering a resource page, really. A place where people can see things in a single form, and know that then if they have questions about it, they can ask the DEI Commission, they can ask state, or file something with the state, or they can go to the school if they witness something. It begins to answer the questions and set up that foundation, as I mentioned, for the conversation and awareness that the town is moving in a direction. So it kind of checks that box, but isn't performative. It's actually substance.
So,
Go ahead, Sandy.
Brian, I've loved this idea from the first time I've heard it. I think you presented at a DI meeting a couple months back, so I'll try to hide my bias here. In my mind, I think what that landing page accomplishes is raising that awareness, right? You spoke about kids in the school when the survey was taken right after it was launched, not having awareness. People in town maybe not knowing exactly how to get to whatever portal it is to report. Something as succinct as Concord Safe, I think, has a huge impact in reducing that, that threshold that people will need to remember something and try and access it. And as Brian pointed out, I think if that page, all it has is a list of resources on how to, get certain information, how to do that reporting, I think it serves its purpose. It doesn't have to be a tool itself, but just a landing page of sorts.
So it's kind of an entryway.
Yeah.
It could be. There's so many different layers that we're talking about here, There's reporting, there are layers of building awareness, there's layers of communication, there's layers of acting on incidents, I think we're going to talk about it more when we talk about Carla. Sort of our working group here is focused on one piece of this. We have to just understand how this piece fits with the other pieces, whether these systems are subsumed in our working system or there's something that proceeds separately. It's great. There's a lot of activity going, but I think meshing these all together, that's something that's really helpful to the town. As opposed to filling out forms and having barcodes. And I love forms and barcodes, but that's not the answer. The answer is education and communication, people feeling that they can talk to people, they can report and they can get response. So, but that's only a piece of what this working group is doing, so. Any other questions for?
I'd love to hear more about the You Belong in Concord, but maybe that's for a different meeting.
Yeah, no, right now it's an evolving message and we just started it and there's
I
no campaign.
apologize I apologize, but I have to hop in the car. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you,
all.
Brian.
Appreciate it.
So it's just an introduction to making everybody, like, especially in the employees, to feel like they belong here. So it is an evolving message, so could definitely along down the road if we need to merge all of it, yeah. But right now, we just want.
Is it the online training module that was written? Is that what it, do you remember she wrote the online training module? Is that or no?
Oh, I'm not sure about.
Okay,
the
never mind.
online.
It's not that.
And whoever's designed the logo, love it.
Oh, that was a mock-up, that is trial, it's, yeah.
Okay, let me switch gears here. It's 6:30, Carl. I said, oh, look, we're right on time. I want to introduce the main, come over and the main feature tonight, Dr. Carlos Hoyt. Very fortunate to have him with us. If you remember at the beginning when we talked about, gee, we need to do research, we need briefings, we need to hear from people. One of the wise men sitting in the audience, who happens to be the ex officio guy tonight, said, you know, this group needs to learn a bit more of the larger context for what we're doing. And to frame what we're doing. So I've been talking to Carlos for, I don't know, weeks, month, about sort of how he could help provide the context, the framing, talk about the challenge and benefits of what we're doing. Carlos is an author and educator. He has many years of experience in the diversity, equity, and inclusion experience with businesses, schools. He is a very active consultant in this area, and I'm very pleased that you're with us tonight to lead a discussion. Thank you for the pre-work that he gave us. I'm sure everybody did their homework, but you'll find out, as most teachers do. So I'll turn it over to you, Carlos.
Well, thank you. It's nice to see you in person.
Yeah.
And some other friends that I've never seen in person. And it's good to see some of you again. So thanks for having me. I know we have short time, so I'm going to try to respect for myself in terms of my own comments and give you all a chance to talk with each other. So let me read a little bit and then hopefully stop yakking at you as soon as possible and give you a chance to jump into this thing. So about 3 years ago, I shared a public account of a social bias incident in this town, not too far away from here at an ATM. And I did it not necessarily expecting anything back. Right? I did it because I wanted to entitle myself to express my concern about something that happened in a particular place, and it just happened to be Concord. I was so pleasantly surprised and gratified by the response that I got from some Concord residents who reached out to me with empathy and comfort and validation and also accountability, you know, for what Concord could be, should be doing better. And that actually led to not just the feelings and the acknowledgement, but some work that I got to do in town with folks, some really gratifying collaboration. Since then, I've gotten a chance to do a number of things in town. And to be honest, I just have a very soft spot in my heart for Concord. No place is perfect, but this place is trying. So when I was invited to do whatever I could to support the efforts of this group, I said, of course, I'd love to do that. Again, not thinking that what I have to offer will be perfect, but I'm happy to jump in. So that's one piece. Because we had such short time, I asked Paul if the working group might be amenable to looking at a couple of things before we got together, so that I wouldn't just be presenting at you and nobody would have a chance to digest or actually converse. So I'm sorry for the homework piece, but I do hope it makes our time together more substantive. The stuff I shared with the working group, for those of you who weren't on it, was basically sort of a highlighting of key aspects of the charge of the group and the work plan of the group. So I would sort of quote a piece of the charge or the working plan, and then provide some commentary. I would say what I think is the strength of the material that's there. I would offer some recommendations, and then some prompts that I hope that people would consider. Feeling confident and hopeful that people had a chance to look at that. Pretty soon I will actually give folks a chance to respond to some of that. I will say for those of you who didn't get a chance to look at it deeply, there are 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 things that I pointed out in my remarks. One was the question that I know people are wrestling with, so it's not new to you, but how do we distinguish between social bias experiences and hate experiences? You know, and one of the remarks I made in my my primer is that people are struggling to find a way to deal with what we call microaggressions, you know, sub-threshold legal issues. Not that the legal issues aren't important, but when we say hate, that's usually a way to think about a crime that's been committed. Was it just a crime, which is bad enough, or was it a hate crime? When we talk about microaggressions, we're not usually talking about feelings, right? Except on the part of the person who was the target, right? Microaggressions actually, you know, tend to stem from behaviors that I didn't mean to do anything, right? Because of my socialization, or I put my foot in my mouth. So it doesn't quite fit into the hate, you know, sort of category. So how do we sort of tease those apart if we want to, if we're going to do a reporting system? Another thing I brought up was doing inclusivity inclusively. You know, when I read the charge of the group, it was clear, and it should be, that part of what prompted the charging of this group was the anti-Semitism that's happening in town. It certainly needs to be pointed out. But I also stated as carefully as I could that no matter what group seems to be on the spot in any given moment, it can be really useful, and I actually think necessary, to keep all of our work in terms of anti-bias, right? That social bias is social bias is social bias, no matter how it manifests. And the sooner we learn to respond to that, no matter who is the target, the better we're going to do this work. And to be quite strategic about it, the better we're going to avoid somebody saying, what about me? You know, what about my group? It's a very natural human response. And I think we can improve in that area. And I don't mean just Concord, I mean this work in general. I talked about coordination, and that's already come up in the discussion I was just listening to, that thankfully, you know, there are a lot of bright people who have wonderful ideas, are able to take initiative and sort of push things forward. But that can lead to not knowing what's happening, right hand, left hand, siloed work, et cetera. So how do we achieve a kind of coordination that allows the folks at school to talk with the town manager, to talk with commercial people, et cetera, et cetera. And I actually think that's possible too. And it would distinguish Concord if they could figure out a way to start doing that. And I say start, okay, because it would be a big, long process. There's both culture and pragmatics in that. And I also talked about the idea of inviting not just complaints, right, and reports of bad activity, but might there be ways to also invite pro-social experiences? You know, and instead of just tracking, which we have to, you know, the vicious cycle of social bias, could we also track some virtuous stuff? You know, are there ways to bring people together and actually celebrate, you know, things that are making them feel good about this? A lot to take on, obviously. But as I said in my most recent note to the group, I come to this in the spirit of being a critical friend, right? Emphasis on the friend, but I think good friends sort of tell us things we might not see, you know, over our shoulder, things that might be a little bit hard to hear, especially if we're attached to an idea and it has some inertia. And I want to come and offer, you know, my sense that the work is really important. To make the work as effective as possible, we need to constantly open ourselves up to, is it going the way we want to? Are we more attached to a vehicle than a destination? You know, if we have to check ourselves and move backward, are we going to do that? And I am really curious to hear how the folks who have actually been doing the work feel about some of the things I said and offered in the primer. So with that, I would love to give every single member actually a chance to, and I tend to call it a go round, where people get to actually talk just for a minute or two without any interruption so that they can be heard and not distracted. And I'd love to hear from each of you in terms of anything, you know, that struck you as worth responding to, reflecting on, asking questions about, offering ideas about. And once we've heard from everybody, I'd love for there just be open discussion, not just with the members of the working group, but everybody in the room, in terms of questions, et cetera. Because I think that's actually an inclusive way to have a discussion of this sort. Any questions about what I'm
And the
inviting?
chair will permit open comments.
Oh, thank you. I just thought it was your norm. Okay.
No, it's not.
Any questions about what I'm proposing? I don't feel, unless you do, I don't feel a need to call people's names. As soon as anybody's ready, please jump in. What did you read? What are your reflections? What do you want to share with your colleagues about this work? And I'm happy to field questions as well. I don't mean to punt on that aspect of my work. We're on the table?
Sure.
Sure.
I'm Dan Hart. Nice
Hi,
to meet
Dan.
you.
Nice to meet you.
And I used to work years ago, not that long ago, but at ADL. So I do come from a sort of organization, or at least I have some organizational experience in the anti-bias space. I'm a fundraiser, so that's my lane is a little bit different, but obviously being around it was important. So I did read everything and I really appreciate it. And I took some notes and I won't go through everything now. One of the things that struck me kind of, which it was more toward the end, I think, was about your questioning of the having a reporting system, or us focusing on a reporting system, right? Prioritizing that and correct me if I'm wrong, this is how I read it, that it's not that it's unimportant, but that there are other things that we should be putting our energy toward first. It was sort of the cart, putting the cart before the horse. And so I'm interested to kind of, I would love to hear what other people think, and I'd love to get into that. My sort of takeaway is that all of that can be true, right? Obviously we work with limited resources and time, so it's not a perfect world. But I feel like, I think one of the things you said was based on the DEIC survey from a few years ago, that the reporting was sort of number 3 or number 4, but above it was more like education and programming and engagement. So my question is, can we not do it all? Do we have to sort of prioritize? I think a reporting system is important because we need the data, we need to know what we're dealing with, but that only works if people use it and feel that it's that they can trust the system, so to speak. So I'm just kind of opining, I'm just sort of throwing stuff out here, but it's something that I'd like to hear what other people think. And I would be interested to hear more about the personal versus social identity. That was something you raised in the document. So those are just a few things to start with.
Thank you for getting us started. I will say this in terms of, modeling. One of the things that's hard about this go-around structure is like, I want to jump in right away and have conversation with everything that you said, but I'm not going to. Except to say, thank you for getting started. And for the rest of us, as you do hear folks, speak, you might want to respond to something. Just jot it down or something so that you don't forget it, because we are going to allow people to speak and then we'll all open up. Should we keep going this way?
Yeah, sure. Paul Bohm, chair of this group. I'm on the select board. I'm sort of the instigator of this working group. So I'll take the blame when they take the glory. So I've lived in town for almost 50 years. For about 35 of those years, as many people do, raising a family, doing our own thing, not terribly community oriented, it was very busy.
I have to interrupt since somebody said it, but you don't look a day over 40, Paul.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt.
I'll know right away you're a liar, so.
What a politician, I laugh.
I moved into town, I'm Jewish, and there was a small Jewish community, and the Jewish community grew. There wasn't a lot of resistance that I saw to that. Although when we built a temple, there was some resistance on the real estate end of things. But I didn't see a lot of, maybe I was just blind to it, didn't see a lot of anti-Semitism in town. It was always there. But I was probably blind to it, and sort of willful ignorance. But background, I'm a engineer and a scientist, so data are very important to me. And so I'm probably one of the least qualified people to opine on anything related to DEI. But I've become familiar with it over time and kind of thrust into it when I took my seat on the select board the same day the ADL complaint came out. And the select board said, geez, we know this is going on in the school, the way we operate in town, the schools do their own thing and the town does their own thing, and occasionally they coordinate. It should be a lot more, but this town has been uniquely dysfunctional in that role. And so the reporting systems went on at the school was opaque to everybody in the community. So it was a surprise. And I was shocked. Some people tell me I shouldn't be shocked, but I was shocked. But we had to determine what the select board could do, and we really didn't know what the select board should do. We knew what the DI commission was charged to do a long time ago. So how can we work with the DI commission and at an elected official level to provide some leadership in that? How can we empower the DI commission to be even more effective? Because we view that they're definitely the implementers of any solution, any education, and we could just guide in that role. So we developed this 2 tracks. We gave all the hard parts to the DI commission, the community and education, interaction, engagement with all of diverse community. And we took on the reporting system. We took on the reporting system because we felt that the town should own this system. The town should be aware of what's going on. And the genesis of all this was, we really didn't have any idea what was going on in town. We had some idea what was going on in the schools, but very little idea what was going on in the town. We've heard singular incidents, but is this a trend? Are we getting better? What? So we had no data. So being a data guy, I said, and being of the school, you can't manage anything unless you can measure it. I think the metrics became very important. So, but it's also a blind spot for me because in forming this group and putting together a work plan, we're very much focused on putting the system together. So the context for putting the system, which is why I'm really glad you're here, we have to understand the bigger picture, how this information can be beneficial. To your point that in the survey, the DI survey didn't rank this very high. I appreciate that, but we're not doing all of that. We're doing a piece of that, but how that piece fits into the rest of the equation is really important to me to figure out. So yeah, that's sort of, so my reaction to you, yes, this is a piece of a much larger issue, and it's not the highest priority in the community, but it's a very important component of that, because I don't think we can understand how good or bad we are or where the problems are unless we can identify them through some measurement. So
Thank you.
Cindy Pishardi. I am a member of the school committee here in town, and I guess a representative on this working group. I'm a first generation immigrant to this country, and I've felt nothing but welcome in this country. Right? It's given me opportunities, and it's adopted me as one of us, one of the people. Now, that's not to say that I haven't experienced biases. Right? Michael, this is a story I've shared with you. What inspired me to get more involved is the fact that when my kids go to schools here and they experience incidents, I don't feel like I'm equipped to help them because I didn't grow up here. I didn't face many of the things that they are facing in their lives. So service in this community, part of it is me trying to make things better, right? Belonging is probably what I feel is most important, and sorry, we're not supposed to respond to what others said, but understanding where we stand is very important, right? So there is no way for us to understand where we stand if we don't have something to look at in how we're performing, in maybe the number of incidents, and as you mentioned, right, Concord is maybe not unique, but it's very good at looking itself in the mirror and saying this is a place where we're falling short and we need to do better. I do believe this reporting tool will help us get there. Now, reading all of the stuff you've sent, a couple of things really stand out. First of all, where you ask if, sorry, I'm gonna go back to that. Whether the tool itself is what we want, or if the destination is what's important. I think that really stood out. It's something we should ask often during this discussion. The second part that stood out was where you said the positive outcomes, right? Or positive, documenting the positive experiences. I don't think we've mentioned that once. And I think it is important for us to understand, if, let's suppose, the number of positive experiences hugely, outnumber the negative, it gives us hope that we are heading in the right direction, right? So, this tool, if it is only reporting the negative, could, totally become something that, makes it depressing to look at. Yes, stuff to work on, but if we don't document the positives, I think it has the potential for turning into that. So I really appreciate you questioning or I guess prompting that thought. And it is something I think we should consider.
Thank you.
Hi, Magnolia. I'll be honest, I didn't read the whole thing.
It's okay. No penalties.
I would like to hear more. But I do understand what the concerns are, and I do agree, it is a bigger picture. And what we're doing needs to start smaller. That hopefully it will become to something more adaptive and sustainable for everyone. And Concord, I think, is ready to move forward.
Thank you.
You say the word group first.
Hi, I'm Debbie Dorfman, and I'm a disability justice attorney, the director of advocacy for Mental Health Legal Advisors Committee. And I've been doing this work for well over 30 years and around the United States. And so this work is really important to me professionally. I also am Jewish and have had personal experiences, particularly when I was in school, and family members who experienced a lot of pretty significant issues around anti-Semitism. And so this is all professionally and very personally important to me. But one of the things that I want to focus on, I thought all of this was really excellent. But one thing that really stood out to me was the inclusivity. And I think that is so very important because until you pointed it out, I hadn't considered that. And I'm really appreciative of you pointing out that we really need to make this clear to everybody. This is inclusive of everybody. This isn't just about anti-Semitism. And I could see where some people might think that's what it is. And I totally hear you on that. And I like the idea of thinking about reframing it because I am concerned that, we want to make sure that in order to make this work, that everybody, it's everybody belongs. Well, that's what we should be saying here, and to make it so that everybody feels safe and that it isn't just, really focused on one group and, the others, sure, you're welcome, but you're not quite as important. And I worry that could be conveyed unintentionally. And so I really appreciate you pointing that out. So that's just one among all of the things. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
What I'd like to do, since you have put together a schedule, we can have public comments later on or questioning as we go along, but if we spend all the time going around here, we're gonna run out of time. So I apologize in advance for not getting your introductory comments here, but if we can kind of proceed, unless somebody has something vital they want to say right now.
I think we
I
could,
sort of dissuaded that, but I'm inviting that now.
I think we could,
What?
a minute or two, they have read the whole report, but I think it might help if we get a picture of who has.
It's up to you. We have, this meeting runs until 7:30. And so Tell me what you wanna do.
I think in the spirit of inclusivity.
I'll put it, if
I
you-
would,
Yeah.
suggest, recommend, advocate for, giving whoever was willing to come out tonight, you know, a chance to maybe just for a minute, you know, respond to anything that you've heard or say the thing that you've been dying to say, about this whole project, whether it's a direct reference to anything that I put out or not. I do think we are bound to do better by hearing as many voices as we can. We can't give everybody what they want. I'm always big on that. Like input can't be influence. Input is important. So yeah, let's take a minute. And anybody who wants to say something, ask a question, go ahead.
Okay, interim public comments.
Thank you.
Yes,
Naomi,
I just want to go back again to the difference between just having data collection and how does the fact of asking people reflect that the town cares? But if we're saying the town cares, what are we gonna do with it? Because if we just have numbers, first of all, I don't know whether they'll be accurate. But I think the message then is the town doesn't really care because we're not following up. There is nobody to receive it. There's nobody to wonder why these problems are happening, what we want to do about them. If it just dies as a number, it will be a disappointment. And it will be a message to everybody.
I'm gonna respond to that, Naomi, and maybe I'll start to shift into discussion. There's a wonderful and very short piece called The Upstreamers. And it was written by a doctor and he was making comments on the sort of medical care system. But the gist of it is that, you know, there's these folks called the downstreamers, you know, who realize and sort of have to deal with the fact that every day they're like dead bodies in the river, like coming by. You know, and they're like, they do their very best to rescue the ones that aren't quite dead yet and set up hospitals and keep track of what's going on, you know, until one day somebody says, you know, I wonder what's happening upstream, you know, that's causing this. And I do think there is that risk, you know, that we can develop a wonderful downstream system that's reactive in some ways and maybe excellent in some ways too. But can we do it all? And if I'm back to what you said, also, you know, focus on the upstream so that the downstream will stop being so taxed. And I sort of take from what you're saying that that is just so important. Doesn't mean we can't do everything, but if we just do the one thing, we can give the message that it's actually sort of okay with us and we're just keeping track of it. Sorry, others. Yes, please.
Michael Williams, also on the school committee. Thank you. Did not have a chance to read through all of the. That might have been my fault from.
I'm sure it was my fault, Michael, but it's.
But I did have the opportunity to sit and learn from you. And to the point of a reporting system only collecting bad information and not the good. You had brought up in fact, I see it in the literature here, striving and thriving. And I think it could be a function of the way the reporting system is designed, that you could find the strivers and also note the thrivers. It might be some question as to whether if you're only getting good news, that answers the question. If you're only getting good news, you might want to look at how you're sampling and make certain that you're sampling realistically and you're reaching all comers. My sense of living here 33 years is very similar to yours, Paul, in the sense that you always knew anti-Semitism was around. I always knew racism was around. And you get used to dealing with what you have to deal with just to make it through the day. Because if you focused on some things, you'd be insane by the time you got home. I think the genesis, I hope, maybe I'm wrong, for what we're doing here tonight, what the select board gave the charge for, might have been made plain by the ADL complaint. But the sense that I have, looking back on 33 years, is something's happening in the community. And it's sort of saying that, yeah, I think we can do a little bit better. And this is one manifestation of that. But the goal is to, let's measure something. And then to answer Naomi's point and the expansion of that you brought, Carlos, is to measure it in all in service of trying to make things better. We don't know how we're gonna do that yet, but I think that intent is there, and I think that's something different that I've seen occurring now that is different from 33 years ago.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for continuing to extend all of your courage and care to our community, both through your truth and your experiences and expertise. My name is Rose Kratzley. I co-chair the DEI Commission here in Concord, and I am the daughter of immigrants. I represent 3 generations of my family that currently live in Concord. And it has been full of both joys and extreme challenges. And so leaning in and acknowledging both the frame of pain here as well as possibility. And so part of my continued engagement around this work is really to keep hope alive and to lean into that possibility more. I feel many of us are operating within systems that were not designed with us and for us in mind. And I'm really interested in that partnership and co-creation on making our community a better place than we found it.
My name's Craig Allmiller. I'm Debbie's husband. I'm listening. And
Thank you for listening.
And supporting too.
Oh, and supporting, absolutely. No, absolutely, yes, yeah. I'm just haven't been, I've been kind of out of the loop for a while.
No worries. Good to have you here. Anything you want to say, my friend?
We've met before. I'm Joe Palumbo. I work here in town. I want, let you do the work.
So at the end of the sort of agenda sketch that I put out, the end says, where do we go from here? I kind of think we're always in that. But for me anyway, it's helpful to have the pieces of people's minds out on the table to sort of try to think about that. I like to be transparent. I don't tend to be right about everything. But I do like to honor people with the truth as I see it, rather than try to tiptoe around things that might be hard to talk about. I will say in terms of data, and this is not to determine that another data collection system wouldn't be useful. But I do want to say it's not the case that we don't have data, at least from what I picked up from the DEIC survey, just a few years ago. Like we have a sense of what people's stated experience of bias is already in the town. We know some of that, right? We know from obviously the thing with the ADL not too long ago that stuff is happening and has been happening at the high school that's concerning. We know that despite the high school having what to my eyes is a pretty rigorous reporting system, right? Just for the negative stuff. It's not some of the positive stuff that I've talked about. But even in a closed system where there's a whole lot of opportunity to educate, that student community, to make clear that this is there, hopefully to feel safe about doing it. Over 50% of the kids aren't doing it or don't know about it.
So point of clarity there.
Yeah.
I think and this was mentioned, right? The lack of awareness of the reporting system. That was a survey done a few months after the launch of the system. So it's in line with what I expected. Do you know when the Panorama report is going to come out next?
I think they're doing it for later this spring.
Okay, so there was a new survey done that closed in November. So when we get the results of that, I'll be curious because it's been a few years since the launch of it, and hopefully the numbers are trending in the right direction. Is all I'll say about that.
Yeah, and I would hope with you that the right direction is that we're hearing from more people.
Right.
Again, it'll just be, complaints, but that's okay. What we know though is that stuff is happening, right? And to I will say as somebody in this skin, right, in this world, and I'm an immigrant too, but I've been here since I've been about 3 or 4 years old. If there's a gap between collection of data and response to concern, it can seem like data is a dodge. Right? Again, this is not to say we shouldn't collect data. But if both things aren't happening at once, we are saying we need the data, right, to either give us permission, or to actually believe you, when you say anecdotally or otherwise that stuff is happening. So this is maybe where, the other charge comes in with the DEIC. And I think that would be cool, if that's the case. But I think it's really important that these things be happening in concert, if they're going to be these two different things. Or I think it's really important for you to consider it because it's not for me to decide.
Well, but just say there was always envisioned that this is a piece that it doesn't live and die with the data system where we declare victory. We have to design something that we know where it's going to go, whether it's raising visibility, whether raising awareness, whether it's improving education. To Naomi, to your point, this is part of a larger problem. We're creating a toolkit that has to be used effectively by the DI Commission, by the town, and by others. I'll challenge one of your statements. I don't think we have a reporting system. We have a survey in town. We have a school reporting system. The town has never developed a reporting system where people can actually voice, here's an incident, this is what happened here, and we have some details. So we have anecdotal information, but we don't have.
It sounds as if we don't consider the police a source for reporting hate.
No, they are, but they report on the hate end of this, on the crime end of things. We had a lieutenant from the police department brief us here on what they do collect information, but it's not. If there's a range from 1 to 10 of the types of incidents, they collect 9 and 10.
That's exactly right.
I think we want to collect 1 through 8. There's a lot down here that's not reported, that's underreported. It's a hypothesis, but I think it's true because people are fearful of reporting, don't feel it'll be useful for reporting, don't feel there's a reaction to it, or don't know how to report it. So that hypothesis is driving what we're doing here, that there's an underbelly of information that's out there that we haven't captured yet.
So I'm curious, well, to hear from everybody in the room, but certainly people who put the work into the reporting system. What are your thoughts about the possible virtue of distinguishing between social bias and hate incidents? Because the underbelly, the 1 through 8, if I'm hearing you correctly, I want to characterize the 1 through 8 as microaggressions.
Yeah.
Right? Small slights, maybe unintentional, but they add up and you get too many paper cuts and you bleed to death. Like, where do I go with that? Right? It's not a hate crime. It wasn't even a crime. It's something that happened to me that felt awful. It makes me feel like I don't belong and my family members don't belong. If we're presenting an opportunity to express that under the moniker of social bias and hate, what do I do with that as a reporter? Am I led to determine that somebody did it because they were hateful? Because I might actually know they weren't hateful. It's just ignorance or it's whatever. So I don't want to, I guess, press in an aggressive way, but I do want to be explicit about like the title of this thing being super important. What are we inviting? So that people can access it, and give us the information that's really useful to us.
And I do like your idea of relabeling this. It's a little late to relabel the group. We already are. We're the bias and hate incident reporting group. We're not going to change that. But I think what we are doing is social bias, anti-bias. It's not the hate end of things. Ultimately, we'd like to capture all of it. Ultimately, we'd like to capture what the town is doing and the schools are doing. I mean, that's beyond this, the community includes the schools, but they have a separate system. We have to develop a system that is different from the police system, different from the school system, but that captures that gap. So it is the 1 through 8. It's social bias. So I'm all for kind of talking about it in those terms.
I'll offer a response to that in a moment. Before I do, let me open it up to the wisdom in the room. Thoughts about that? Yes, please, Mike.
Just a question, exploration of something you brought up earlier. I'm aware of probably since 22, January 22, when the DEI commissions, from then to now, the two surveys, the DEI commission's survey data, and then I was actually part of one that our economic viability group put together, Mimi Graney, just looking at the comfort of people as they went through the community and as a tool for economic viability. And both, to my mind, sort of tracked. And to your point of saying, well, you know, if you've got these surveys that sort of are telling you something, you have an idea. Now, and it's not to say that we're not, it doesn't question all the basis for this body and the work that this body is going to put out. But it does say, yeah, there's stuff going on. And we have two independent studies, the DI Commission study, the economic viability study that suggests, there's stuff going on. And we have these, and we can put together something that refines that tool, but we come to this work with the understanding, there's stuff going on. We need to then, with that as given, look at how do we address this stuff, and who do we want to talk to about addressing this stuff that we're seeing that's going on. Is that fair?
Yeah, my wish, for the town and for this work, and my recommendation would be that, if in fact we're going to have a reporting system of any kind, that it be clearly coupled with a response of some sort. Right, some of that might be triage. This actually is a hate incident. Please talk to the police. Or there's an arm over here. This that you might do, but if it's just a unilateral sort of direction that I put in without knowing what's happening, then it's just, I think, it risks making people feel disaffected and maybe even suspicious of the whole thing. I want to make a meta observation of this conversation that for me, this is what we should be doing. All right. There's sort of some energy in the room where like, are we all agreeing? What happens if we don't agree? That's gold. Because it's only by floating that stuff up that we can scrutinize it and figure out what to do when it comes back down. It might land exactly where it was at the beginning. Right. But it's by doing that we still, first of all, we can do that. We can have diversity of opinions, et cetera, et cetera. And then maybe, we end up making some changes that might not match the thing I came in here with and attached to, but it's better for the outcome that we're looking for. In the spirit of that, we seem to have reached a point, at least in what you said, Paul, and I don't know if it resonates with everybody, that at least in principle, the name of this thing maybe doesn't quite match, where we want the emphasis to be. I'm not answering to anybody in town. So maybe it's easy for me to say, but that's enough for a reason for me to say, well, then we change the name now, right? That's a response that people appreciate, that we're not going to keep doing something to you or keep doing something that doesn't work for you just because of the inertia of our movement, right? We will pivot on a dime to make sure we're doing the best we can for you. That's proof, right? That people are listening and they're willing to make a change that people will understand and maybe even celebrate. So I invite us to entitle ourselves to not worry about that looking bad and actually imagine that it might look great if we can make those kind of pivots. Doesn't necessarily have to be this one, but just as a principle of what I consider to be good DEI practice, like make a positive change whenever you can make it, right? And don't feel like a schedule is holding you back, whether it's already in print or it's up on the website, like people are out there suffering. And any message we can give them that we're listening and we're moving as quickly as we can, like it just makes people feel better.
I think we have an opportunity to communicate that name change. We have focus groups going on, we have public forums. We have yet to communicate with the public in general. They sort of know what we're doing. But I'm not sure at this point whether the name change would clarify to the public at this point what we're doing. I think as we get into it, as we have more substance, as we answer some of the questions in our work, like mechanisms of reporting, how it's safe, what types of things we're reporting, what's an incident. As we define those things, I think that's going to make more sense to people than the name.
This is gonna sound a little bit pedantic.
The substance for me is more important than the name.
I spent some time in a lovely school in Chestnut Hill, close to Chestnut Hill School, and we spent part of a whole year learning about empathy. We actually wrote a book, and these are kids from not quite beginners. I guess it was pre-K right through 6th grade, and part of the book has to do with, or part of the learning was, well, if we know what empathy means, and it means understanding somebody's feelings so that we can at least be clear on what they're doing, how do we know what somebody's feeling? And there's a question like to the kids. And the answer is, I won't give you the question because I don't want to put you on the spot. It's we ask them, right? And I know that there are, forums and focus groups set up. I think one way to know if our language, if our goal, if our movement is actually resonating with the people who are most at risk, for social bias, is to bend over backwards to make sure that we're inviting them to give their input. And that way, we don't have to say, we made a mistake because we thought from this distance this was the right thing, right? And let's give the glory to these people and let's get the buy-in, because they will then say, well, I think if we're going to do this, it should be called this. And if we're going to do this, then I want this to happen. And for my community, et cetera, all the stuff that people do when they get together. And that's messy. And again, input can't always translate to influence, but the input is really important. So I think I've seen, and I could have missed stuff, it was stuff I've reviewed, so I apologize if I have. But I think I see here and there opportunities for the group to get input from the community, and maybe DEIC again can partner with this and some of the educational stuff you're doing. But I think being super explicit about that is really, really important. And not just, and I'll be quiet in just a moment, I don't want to pontificate. Not just sort of putting it on a flyer or something, but I mean going to people and getting them in the room. Because too many people just feel like this is not for me. And I'm too busy. And you're not going to listen to me. I'm just going to be disappointed. So they have to be recruited right into this thing.
Well,
I just wonder if we can do some of that.
I think this is why the focus groups is perfect timing. And this is really fertile information for to get
helpful.
Not a public forum, but small groups. Hopefully there'll be 10 or 20 people to get this kind of input. But that's the plan. Maybe we do more than 2 of these. We'll see how many are interested. I agree. Getting that direct input from the public is really important.
And the trust building, I guess, comes from that in part, but.
Yeah. And I think what's also important, just in my own experience with the advocacy that I do, is the show, like not just showing up once and going, oh, thanks so much, and then going off, but having the continued dialogue is really important, because that's been my experience to build the trust. People have to, the first time around, they may not, they're like, well, who are you? And are you going to really come back? And what are you going to do with the information that I give you? And so I really want, as part of the focus groups, to make sure that people know that, this is, we're doing this, there'll be other opportunities, and you will be hearing from us, and not to just kind of leave people kind of hanging and wondering. I don't want people to feel used.
I would like to know what people want us to do with the information.
Exactly.
Rather than us saying, oh, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Because it's a
matters.
two-way question. What matters?
Yeah.
What should we do with this information? How could it be beneficial to you?
Right.
When I was doing my PhD work and I was learning about research, I don't know how I made it through because I'm so bad at statistics. But one of the things that a couple of my mentors were so good at, was pushing me to sort of, to answer the question, how will you know if you're wrong? And I, of course, was like, what do you mean? I could change the world with my theories. But it's such an important question. And at some point, it was late in the game because this was PhD school. I realized that, like, that's the trick, that's the liberation, that's the real power. I'm going to lead with that. Like, tell me where I might be wrong. Tell me what I'm missing. Because no matter how shiny my ideas are, if they're not going to be latched onto by you, I'm wasting my time. So how do we invite people to give us that feedback? I think we can be proud of our ideas, and certainly folks would feel wonderful about this volunteer work that you're doing, absolutely. But then the last piece, I think, is like getting the people who we're trying to serve to actually work with us and not just receive our goods. Yes, please.
Having observed these meetings and speaking as a ex officio member, because I'm the DI person tonight, but I'm not on the committee. You should give yourselves the permission. I think I kind of maybe hear what you're saying about you can shape this however you think it should be, even if it looks quite different than what you thought it was going to look like when you signed up to be on the working group. And even for you as the chair, like what you may think your colleagues are thinking this is going to be could be something very different based on the collective knowledge of what you learn over the next few months together. And I just think you should give yourselves that permission, because when I was looking at my phone as I went back to your charge, and your charge said this group is established to advise the select board on the development of a protocol to improve. Your advice might be to develop something quite different than what y'all thought it was going to be. So I just wanted to put that out there. You need to give yourselves the permission to be creative as you do this and not feel like you must create a thing.
I worked at Belmont Day School for a while during like the terrible, challenging period in society when we had the social reckoning and all that stuff was. And I feel bad saying it because I guess I'm being cynical, but I was so proud of that school for making some changes in the moment. It was COVID, it was politics, it was Black Lives Matter, it was everything. We literally changed up the program, right, to respond to what the kids needed. And for some parents, they had a little bit of trouble with it, but most parents actually said to us, yes, we need to go this. So yeah, that wasn't the way we usually did school, but it was a response to what people needed. And I absolutely echo what you're saying. I think it's not just your opportunity. I would actually say it's your obligation, like to lead, because you now have the information. You have a charge, but now you've lived it for a while, and you should get to say, what makes sense in terms of your recommendation. I feel as if that's what the select board should be expecting from you. I know we're pushing on 7:30. I hope I haven't, I hope I'm not railroading anything. But as I said earlier, I'd rather, honor you with my honest views on the stuff and then leave you to talk and figure out where you want to go. And if nothing else, we will have a chance to have things float up a little bit and see where they land again. And, I hope this goes without saying, I'm more than happy to keep provoking you. If that would be useful. I don't know provoking you. I'm more than happy to work with you and support you in any way I can.
And I do want to say thank you, right? Because a lot of these questions that you've asked, maybe it's a blind spots, right? Things we hadn't considered. So it's great that we have these prompts to now discuss and make sure we all see the world the same way. Or if we don't, know why we're not.
Yeah, and I would say maybe ask in terms of timeframes. I know you've given yourself a time to deliver stuff. I'm doing some work with a charter school system, Brook Charter Schools, 4 campuses, 8 sessions on each campus for 3 years is the program we're doing on DEIB, because the head of stuff there, the human resources person, is just a visionary. And she understands that urgency without readiness usually ends in a bad place. And it's fascinating because so many of the teachers are saying, can't we get to the kids? Because these 2 years is all adults. Let's get our act together, figure this stuff out, learn about DEI best practices. And our answer is, we're so glad you want to do that. But if we start to put this stuff in the classroom and it doesn't work, oh my gosh, what will it have been worth? So let's get it right as we can. So again, even in terms of time frame, I would say allow yourself to to shift that around too. There's no external source that I'm aware of that says if you don't finish this by X time, we're taking your money. So,
It's all voluntary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
No money.
But I think what you said right now, and Dan, you said this before, it's about trust, right? And if we hurry into something and get it wrong, it probably doesn't bode well for that trust.
it's worse than doing nothing is what I usually say to people. Because it just lands in the minds of the people who are most at risk as one more time. You know, like, why can't they get it right? You know, either they're not smart enough, they're not putting the time in, or they don't care enough, but it doesn't matter. Like, and then I just start to lose trust in everything. It's just that comes from out of that. And I think Concord, again, this is why I'm here tonight. I think this is a town that wants to try to get it right. It's just really hard work.
Can I just, one thing that struck me on page 4, I just, and this is gonna sound defensive,
Oh, no, it's
because
okay.
it probably is. We're challenges and opportunities. You posed the question, how and why it was determined that the best way for the select board to address social bias incidents was to establish a working group charged with developing a reporting system. This is one component of, this isn't the select board's view of this is gonna solve everything. This is the select board's view of this is an important piece of the puzzle. Number 1 in our motion was the other pieces of this, how we're gonna use the information, how we're gonna communicate, raise awareness, visibility, solve problems, change the culture. That is the ultimate goal of all of this, but to do that, we felt that we needed the information, so that wasn't the be all and end all. So your statement seems to say, we thought this was gonna solve all the problems. No way, it was never gonna do that.
No,
And
my statement was a question, and the question was, how was it determined? And that wasn't rhetorical. I'm very curious about that.
It was determined that, as I said, because it was a gap in information. We needed the information. We knew that there were things happening. We knew from the DI's, the survey, we knew from Comstat that things happening in the town.
But I
But
would
we're
ask,
aligned to
I'm
them.
not asking, I know you're on the select board, but if
Yeah.
the select board were in the room, I would ask, why didn't we then track our responses to the data that we got out of that survey? Because number 1 was get some DEI expertise. I think number 2 was training for leaders. I think number 3 might have been something about reporting, but not necessarily developing a system. Why didn't we go with that? And I don't know the answer to that. I'm just curious about it.
No.
So it's not an accusation
Yeah.
that we shouldn't have done it. I just wonder how we got there. And if this group, you know, being charged as you are to do what the select board charged you to do, is realizing that, whoa, maybe we skipped a step. You know, then we're in that position of the stereotype male, right? Who's driving and won't stop and get directions. Right? Maybe you have to turn around. And I want to avoid that regret, that's all.
What I might offer is, again, I'm not part of the
Yeah.
select board, but looking at everything that was placed above reporting, all of those are big budget impact. This is a working group.
Meaning it's about money?
No, I mean, so immediately, this is the one action we could take. Again.
I don't know that.
Speculation.
Because if we were to say, all right, here's the number 1 priority, then the question is, how do we make that work? And the answer could be, we can't make it work. We have the will, but not the resources. My only question is, what was the process? I'm just very, very curious about it. Because if it was thoughtful and that's it, this is the best we can do, then that's the answer to my question. I'm not sure it was though.
That's fair.
And if it wasn't, and it was a good question to have asked, stop and ask it. So it's. All right, it must be past 7:30 now. That I am.
I think
really-
it was thoughtful, but I'm not sure. No.
I don't mean like it was thoughtless, but you know, there was some pressure on the town, right? ADL's coming at the school, like this is happening, we have to do something. I get all that. We responded, but was it reactive? You know, too often this work is reactive. I see it all the time and I understand it, but I do my very best to invite people to take a breath and say, have we just been sucked into reactive mode? And if so, is it going to work out anyway? Or should we actually pause, and it might get us some ire from people who are looking for urgent action and actually say, no, let's go back and think about this. Let's not build on a sort of shoddy foundation or something we could have done better. And let's admit that we might not get it right all the time. Again, you're looking at a perfectionist. I don't like to admit that, but I have learned that it's better to invite it, you know, than to hide from it. So anyway, thanks. I appreciate you inviting me in.
Thank you.
I hope you don't regret it down the line. And I look forward to seeing where you go from here. I think it's really,
Thank
really
you,
important.
thank you for being provocative. And you are, and it's.
I like to say positively provocative, I hope, but that's for you to determine.
Well, no, it was positively provocative. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The things that we will be discussing further. And we'll be discussing with the DI here. You talk about the DI survey, which is really rich in information. I think there were actions taken from that. There are things happening in town that, you know, beyond the measurement. There are events, there's communication. There are improvements. It's part of the DI Commission's action plan. The things we haven't done, things we haven't invested in, but DI Commission hasn't been sitting idly since 2023. So there has been action, not select board action. We've relied on the DI Commission. But with this new post ADL reality, we just felt we had to get more information. And the DI survey information was static. What's happening? How do we measure progress? That's part of what we're doing. Are we getting better or worse? Are we capturing all the information?
Oh, no, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I mean, I think any information capture, you know, is immediately static. Right, so you have to keep coming at it, you know, going on what we knew last time, building on that, etc. So yeah, I think the 2022, 23 information is old information, including the school stuff, right? What's the information now? But we're always going to be responding to the last picture that we took.
Yeah.
How do we get into preventive mode?
Well, it told us we cannot be complacent. That's the message.
All right, folks, we're pushing on that bedtime.
Thank you. As far as our meeting, I think we've hit the agenda. Any other public comment? Our next meeting is on the 15th, and we have two speakers. I think Court Booth and the Human Rights Commission is going to join us, and what's the first name? Andrea Thompson from, excuse me, Antonia Thompson from the DI, from the district attorney, which will be here in 15.
Nice. No, Andrea Thompson.
Hmm?
Andrea Thompson, is that you?
Yeah.
No, it's
No, I'm thinking of someone else.
Antonia.
Yeah, I'm getting ready, sorry.
Andrea.
Yeah.
Andrea's. And then we'll have to talk about the meeting scheduled to February, right? Because I think at that point, we need to change gears a little bit, take all the information that we've gotten here from the focus groups and actually answer some of the questions that we've been talking about here tonight. I still say we're on track for developing a system, but what we call it, we'll talk about it. But I think what the town is going to do with the information is really important, and the focus group's gonna have, that's a direct question you can ask people.
Definitely will.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.